Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Happy Thursday. We've got a ton to talk about on today's show. Pat Bev gets punished for his antics. We'll talk a bit about that. Jamal Murray kind of gets punished for his antics. We got to talk about that more. The Hornets hire a new head coach. We've got a new kind of MVP to talk about. Jimmy Butler makes his preferences known too in terms of his landing spot for next season. Tons of stuff for us to break down on today's show. Keith, it's like 1,000,000 degrees right now. Summer is in the air. The weather is already here, and it just has me, on one hand, yes, I'm melting. On the other hand, though, it gets me that much more excited for all the trades, the transaction, the draft, everything that we've got coming in the NBA this summer.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it's always funny, basketball is a winter sport, but like it ends in, when it's heating up is the summertime. But yeah, man, it's 97 here in Orlando today. And it's like every bit of 97 too. It's not one of those like, well, it's 97, but it's really doesn't feel like it feels it. It's gross and humid. So I'm sure the heat index is well over 100. It's it's just been one of those disgusting days where it's these days for us are like you walk outside and you immediately feel like you need another shower because you're already soaked in sweat, and that's just to like walk to the mailbox and before anybody makes cracks. No, I don't have a mile long driveway or anything. I'm like steps outside, so it's it's gross up, but yeah, man, we're ready. Look at Stu is ready too.
Stu is ready. Stu's like, hey,
man.
Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Hey,
that's like my dog normally.
Yeah.
Bella had a good suggestion. She thought we should do a show where we just put the animals on camera and we talk and then just dub over the animals just sitting in our chairs.
Oh, where we do the voices for the animals, you mean?
Well, I think she was more like we just do a show, but the animals just sit there and stare at the camera the whole time. And to be honest, it'd probably be our highest viewed show ever because people love animals.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see. We'll have to arrange it, right? We'll have to get with the animals union and all that stuff, and we'll put a disclaimer: no animals were harmed during the filming of this show and all that stuff. So, but
do you do voices for your animals?
Once in a while, yeah.
Okay.
Do you call your pets by anything except their actual names?
When I'm mad at them.
We don't give like our two dogs are Carly and Tatum, and they don't ever get called that. They get called anything but that. Like it's like just not even out of anger, just like when we're calling them and playing with them. And none of our animals have really ever been called by what we actually named them, which I don't fully understand why that happens. If they get called by their names, it's usually because they're being bad and they're in trouble.
Pet names are not static. They evolve as time goes on. It's the way that it goes. All right, let's get into
talk
Stu is sneezing over here. Let's get into some basketball here. And let's start with last night's game. The Knicks, they go up 2-0 on the Indiana Pacers, but they lose OG Anunoby. Like at this point, Tom Thibodeau is going to have to put on a jersey because they are just about out of players right now. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to try to figure something out. Keith, is this Knicks team in trouble just due to their losses at this point? Like even if they get through the Pacers, they're not going to have any players left by the time they get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, and there's no extra days off in this series until we get to like a week from now. And that's if it goes to a game 6. There's 2 days in between games 5 and 6 as they try to kind of align things. So we're into the full on every other day period for these teams, which is not bad. And New York to Indiana is not like terrible travel or anything. It's just you would like an extra day to probably get these now 6 players that they have healthy off their feet for a little bit. So there was a point too in this game, in case anybody didn't see it. Jalen Brunson left the court in the first half. It just was gone. Like went to the locker room.
Yeah.
It was like, well, now they're definitely done. If he's out, like they don't really have a chance. He came back. We don't have any kind of update. I believe all he said to Chris Haynes was something along the lines of, I was out there. That was in the post-game on-court interview, but it was announced he had a sore foot, but he played through it. But then Anunoby in the second half, he was on kind of a run-out fast break, and he pulled up, and it looked bad. It looked like he knew my hamstring went and that's it. Because it wasn't even like I'm going to slow down. It was full on like I can't move properly. And then he did that whole like stiff legged, like limp off deal. We don't have any update. We won't probably get an update for a little bit later today, as they don't have to put out an injury report till later today for tomorrow's game. But my guess is at best he's going to be questionable, and at worst he may. I don't think there's any chance he plays. And you know how these things go now. Guy gets hurt. All the real Twitter, like the real Twitter doctors, like people who actually know what they talk about now, have made like almost like a second job, I guess, out of like, hey, I'll talk about what it looked like I saw with the injury mechanism. And they're all very clear to be like, look, I don't know. I haven't examined the guy. But a bunch of them said hamstrings are generally, it's going to be at least a week with what it looked like he did. So we'll see. But that means they're down to Precious Achiuwa maybe starts. Maybe they go super ridiculously small with Miles McBride starting, and they really start 4 guards around 1 big. But Mitchell Robinson's out. Julius Randle obviously out. Bojan Bogdanovic out. Like that, this is a mess. So that's all a very long way of saying, yeah, I think they're in some trouble here. The Pacers have been right there in both of those games. So I don't feel great about the Knicks going forward, despite the fact that they're up 2-0 in the series.
Yeah, they're just missing so many players. It's going to make things really tough. And they are grit and grind, their hustle, their toughness, they're all of that. But at some point, it's going to catch up to you. I mean, I saw a crazy stat going around today, Keith, that said, and I have not confirmed this, but it sounds totally right. So I don't doubt it. Josh Hart.
I know the one you're talking about.
They've played 8 games, 8 playoff games. Josh Hart has been not on the floor for a total of 15 minutes during those 8 games. That's insane.
Yeah. It's like 380 out of 395 or something like that, in that range. Like, yeah, that's crazy. Again, I think I said this yesterday or earlier this week, but I'll repeat it. They can get through the Pacers, especially up 2-0. They can win this series without a doubt. My worry is, what are they going to have left when they go up against, and I'm obviously counting my eggs here, but against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals? Are you going to have anything left in the tank? Because you're not getting Mitchell Robinson back. You're not getting Randall back. You're not getting Bogdanovic back. We don't know on Anunoby, but who knows, right? Who knows what that turns out to be. Yeah, it's a hamstring. So that could be a multi-week injury. So if you don't get him back, now where are you going to be at? And it's, to your point, it's not, this is not a knock. At some point, you hit the point of no return with these injuries, where it's like, it's just too much. You just can't put this much on the other guys. They're going to have to obviously play Precious Achiuwa more. He was already playing some as the backup 5 because Robinson is out. And maybe they go to Jericho Sims and Achiuwa plays more at the 4. Alec Burks made a very brief cameo appearance in game 2. I would expect you're going to have to see some of him. But as you're Tom Thibodeau, you're looking down the bench and it's like, I'm kind of running out of options here. I've got some guys, but they're guys I'd rather not go to. So I would say all the starters, they're going to all have to play a lot more. And Isaiah Hartenstein, that means he's going to have to up his minutes. And the hard thing for him is foul trouble. If he gets in foul trouble, where do you go to? I guess probably Jericho Sims, but I don't know, man. This is tough. Let's flip to the Pacers side real quick.
Yeah.
Would they send a thing of 78 calls, I believe it is, they sent to the NBA. That was per Brian Windhorst of ESPN. It was 29 calls from game 1, 49 calls from game 2. This is a tried and true tactic. Phil Jackson was the master of this when he was with the Bulls, brought it to the Lakers of, I don't like the way things are going to be called. I'm going to make a huge deal of it in the media. We're going to send a tape to the league. And guess what? Reason everybody else does it is because it works. I would be shocked if the Pacers don't get 1 million calls in game 3 in Indiana and don't shoot a whole bunch of free throws. That's historically how these things have kind of gone. The NBA is not going to go back and be like, you know what, you're right. Let's replay game 2. Like, that's not going to be a thing. But yeah, it's some of it, I'm like, there were 49 plays. Like, really? Like, come on now. Like, what are we doing? But it's it's gonna be interesting.
Keith, I'll tell you what. The Pacers doing this, the Pacers arguing for calls, whatever. Like, that's fine. That's the playoffs. That's what happens. Coaches do that through the media. The only thing I don't like from all of that, because people say, oh, they're whining, they're complaining. No, they're trying to get any advantage that they can. And when you're down 0-2, you have to, because you're desperate, because you have to be desperate. I'll tell you what, though, I don't like this from Rick Carlisle. Small market teams deserve an equal shot. They deserve a fair shot no matter where they're playing. Look, complain about foul calls all you want. Try to litigate through the media why you should be getting more calls. Send your clips to the NBA. But this whole small market victim mentality crap is absolutely ridiculous. The NBA bends over backwards to do everything they can to try to level the playing field and boost small markets. There's some advantages that some teams have, and I realize I'm incredibly biased coming from a Lakers perspective here, but there's some advantages like weather that certain teams are going to have. The players who hate cold weather are going to go play in Miami. They're not going to go play in, say, Boston. They're not going to go play in Minnesota. They're not going to go play in cold weather cities. There's certain advantages that are going to be inherent to certain markets, and yes, big markets do have some advantages in that regard as well. But look at what's happening. You've got OKC, Minnesota, and Denver. And Denver just beat the Lakers in a 4-1 series that didn't even get extended to 6 games or 7 games or anything like that. There's not a lot of evidence that there's this small market conspiracy. So this whole, well, woe is us, this small market team being picked on and everything. Look, I get it. You're trying to get every advantage that you can. But to go to a place of, it's because we're a small market team and playing against the big market Knicks. Come on, that's absurd.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I always go to the San Antonio Spurs for 2 decades were the preeminent franchise in the NBA. Yeah. Like they were basically title contenders for almost all of that 2-decade long run of making the playoffs. And by the end, it was probably closer to 22 or 23 years. I can't remember exactly, but and that's one of the smallest markets in the league. So I just, you like that part, I don't buy into that. I mean, if that was true, the league would have the Celtics and the Lakers. They would rearrange it for them to play every year in the finals. It's the league's biggest rivalry. It's the most historic rivalry the league has. It's 2 huge markets. It's East Coast versus West Coast in the most extreme ways possible. They would do that, and maybe every once in a while they'd sneak the Knicks or the Warriors in there, or maybe the 76ers to cover off on some other big markets. It's just, I get lost quite a bit in that stuff too, where it's like, all right, let's settle down a little bit with that. To your point, yes, there are inherent advantages that some of the big markets have, but it's just, I don't think any referee is going out there on their own or with direction from the league saying, all right, we got to make sure the Knicks are getting all the calls tonight. Like, I just don't think that's how it works. Oh, breaking news.
I'm going to hit the button. We got breaking news mid-show here.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
Maybe horrifying indeed to Frank Vogel. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams Charania as well. I don't know which one got it first. They were within milliseconds of each other.
Yeah, I got the Woj tweet notification first, but yeah.
But the Phoenix Suns have dismissed head coach Frank Vogel. So that puts the Suns, and we do have some other coaching news to get into today, but that now puts the Suns out onto the coaching market, and they'll look to find a new head coach. Keith, immediate reaction here. Was this the correct move by the Suns?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think this is a mistake by Phoenix. I don't know who you are going to hire that it is going to be that much better. This almost feels like, to me, we had to do something, and we have already committed to we're not trading Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, or Devin Booker. Like, none of that is going to happen. So we have to do something to be different. Is it necessarily the wrong decision tactics-wise? No, because I don't think they gave Frank Vogel the kind of roster he can win with. So that part, I don't really hate that part of it. It sounds kind of funny, and I don't know where he would ever be at. You know who might actually be an awesome coach for this team?
Who?
Mike D'Antoni. Like, just play super fast. He loves those small lineups. I mean, he's older, so I don't know where any of that is at. But that part popped in my head earlier today when I was like, if they do move on from Vogel, I was working on the Suns offseason stuff. And I was like, if they move on from Vogel, like D'Antoni could be an interesting, coaching name out there. But yeah, it's not a Frank Vogel roster. Like, he's not going to be successful. He doesn't have anything resembling a defensive big that can anchor the way he wants to play. And this feels like someone had to take the fall for a season falling short and can't fire all the players, so we're going to fire the coach. I don't know. It feels weird to me that this is the way they're going, but hey, they that's what they want to do. Fine, I guess.
So what's the list at now? Lakers, Suns, Wizards. Now that, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Now that the Hornets have found their guy, those are the teams on the market right now for a coach.
Yeah. Lakers, Suns, Wizards. Yep.
So I look at what happened here. I think you're absolutely right. I think this is now 2 seasons in a row that Frank Vogel was given a roster that didn't fit his skill set, and he lost his job because of it, in part. And you know what? I was critical of Frank Vogel when he was with the Lakers and talked about how he was given a bad situation. He didn't make that situation better, and that was one of the shortcuts, right? Coaches need to be flexible. They need to be able to take guys, even guys that don't, especially at the NBA level, they need to be able to take guys that don't fit their system, and they need to adapt their system and find ways to find success regardless. And I thought that was one of Frank Vogel's shortcomings when he was with the Lakers. You can argue it was a shortcoming here with the Suns as well. The problem they've got is, again, you've got a defense-first head coach in Frank Vogel, and your 3 main guys aren't defensive players at this point. Kevin Durant is the defender that he once was, but you also have Kevin Durant clearly didn't like playing in Frank Vogel's offense.
Yeah.
Which we've heard that essentially when he was with the Lakers, the offense was LeBron and Rondo came up with the offense. Like, that's what it was. Frank just said, hey, you guys handle it. I'm going to take care of the defense. So it's not a surprise that they wouldn't be super enamored with Vogel's offense. But if you're the Suns, you can't change much else, as you said. And if KD is saying, I don't like playing for this guy, you've got to change something. I get it. Why they went ahead and did this. I don't think it's all Frank Vogel's fault. But this is also the move that you have to make. This is the easiest move to make if you're the Suns. So I understand why they did it. The question then becomes, who takes over? Who becomes that guy? Maybe it's Mike D'Antoni. We'll see. But now the Suns are another team looking for a coach. No. I don't. I think that's a good idea. But yeah,
that popped in my head because it was like, oh, these are like this roster is like built for like his dream kind of scenario where it's like, I've got all kinds of offensive weapons. The problem is they also don't want to play super fast. Those guys like Beal and Durant aren't going to get out and run the floor like that anymore. So yeah, I'm really curious now because if anything, this makes it maybe a little harder on the Lakers because these are 2 teams that are in similar spots as far as we're both trying to contend around aging rosters, and there's pressure to win right now. The Wizards they're in a hole. I mean, that's one of these things that's not like the other situation, as far as the open jobs go. The Wizards they're in a completely different planet. So now it turns into anytime though you're looking for a new coach and people start coming off the board, it just lends a little bit more urgency to that. We're going to get into somebody who came off the board here in a moment, but yeah, for the Lakers and Suns, I would bet they're probably both interested in a lot of the same people. Where it's going to be, all right, who are we talking to? Where are we going? And a lot of the same people would say, all right, 2 very similar parts of the country. So that part is not going to swing things too much one way or the other. Both are veteran-laden rosters. Both are pressure to win right away. Let's go. Both windows are not, 5-10-year windows. These are, really, if we're being realistic, 3-year-ish windows. So let's try to get this done right away. So yeah, I'm curious to see where they go now and see if does this push one of the 2 to move faster on. Hey, we know the other guys may want Coach X as a candidate. Let's try to get in on that guy right away.
Word came out, I believe it was yesterday, day before. The Lakers are kind of slow playing their coaching search right now. They're taking their time. My sense is they're probably hoping, obviously it's very unlikely, but hoping that things don't work out with Ty Lue and the Clippers and their extension talks. But I do wonder if this kind of lights a bit of a fire under them now that the Suns are going to be on the market. And as you said, they're going to be competing, looking at probably the same guys. One guy they won't be hiring, though, Charles Lee, who agreed with the Hornets to become their new head coach. Keith, this was interesting, I thought, because it was the Hornets who announced it.
Yeah,
I kind of had to do a double take. I'm like, wait, this isn't Woj or Shams or something. No, it was actually the team, go figure, announcing that they had hired him as their next head coach. I thought that blew me away, that they managed to get this done without any newsbreaker finding out and spoiling it.
Yeah, I thought I always get amused by one of those things, or like a player announces they're signing themselves now, like that's been a thing we've seen on occasion, and those always do make me laugh a little bit, where it's like, oh man, nobody got that. Or like Kawhi's extension, the Clippers just announced it, and it was like Kawhi's extended, and everybody's like, whoa, where are we going with this? But yeah, Charles Lee is one of those assistant coaches that has done the circuit. You first started hearing his name mentioned for jobs or his potential head coach about 3 or 4 years ago. Then he started getting some interviews. Then it got a little bit more serious where he's a final candidate. And now he finally gets a job. He's with the Celtics right now as one of Joe Mazzulla's top assistants, along with Sam Cassell. Those are like his two top guys on his bench as they really rebuilt their bench. If we remember back when Mazzulla got the job, it was really only him and Damon Stoudemire and a couple other younger assistant coaches that remained, because other guys had gotten jobs after Ime Udoka was fired. And then Stoudemire got the Georgia Tech job, and the Celtics let him go because he needed to go start recruiting and all this. In Charles Lee's case, he is going to finish the year with the Celtics. Whatever their playoff run leads to, he will be there for the duration of it. Then it'll go over to the Hornets. I am sure there will be some double duty where he'll probably be interviewing assistants and figuring that stuff out. But Charles Lee, if people don't know, he was on Mike Budenholzer's staff in Atlanta, went with Bud to Milwaukee, was a big part of their success there. He's somebody that players really like, really enjoy. He's very young. He's not even 40 yet. I like when young teams hire a young coach and kind of let the coach grow with the team, provided then when they're there, they see it through and let the young coach stay and not immediately turn, all right, well, we're good now. Now we need a veteran coach. Get this guy out of here. Sometimes it pays off with a guy like Mark Daigneault in the Thunder. He's been their guy. He's grown with that team.
Coach of the year.
Now look at how well they're playing. Jamal Mosley, another example. First-time younger head coach, has grown with the Magic into being a playoff team. So I'm really excited for him, and I'm excited to see what the Hornets do with a real chance at a full, fresh start. New ownership, new front office, new coach. I think we're probably going to see some new players as well. Miles Bridges, obviously, their major free agent story that we'll be watching all the way into a resolution there. But it's got a chance to be a really interesting, fun reset for Charlotte.
All right, let's jump over to a coach who could be on the way out. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but Chauncey Billups, perhaps on those rumblings starting to sound here that he could be on the way out in Portland. This is another team, though, kind of like the Hornets, like the Wizards, in a very different category compared to the Lakers and the Suns. So probably a different pool of candidates should the Blazers decide to move on. Not that decision has been reached, but usually not a good sign when this kind of stuff starts to leak out.
Yeah, and you're hearing it because other teams are kind of maybe looking at Chauncey Billups and like, could we get him if the Trailblazers let him go? They fired two of his assistant coaches, including his brother. Which is generally not something we often see happen like that. Like that becomes a whole thing. So my guess is he's back, but I think it's going to be, if they don't show real tangible improvements, not that they have to be a playoff team, but just we're playing better basketball. We're not getting drilled in every game we play and those kind of things. Then I think there's a chance we see them go the direction of, all right, see you later. We're going to really reset this thing next year, because they had one of the worst scoring margins this year in the league. It was -9. I just looked it up. Like they were pretty hopeless pretty early on in the year, and they had a million injuries and all that. So my guess it'll be, hey, just try to show some improvements, and then maybe we can build on something. And if you don't, we're going to move on. And that might be one. like, let's say they start like 5-15 next year, that could be one of the early firings we see where it's all right, we're just going to really pull the Band-Aid off here and restart.
Yeah. And that's, we'll see if the Blazers ultimately go down that path. I do wonder how many teams would be interested in Chauncey if he is out with Portland, but
yeah, I wonder
that could add a whole new wrinkle.
Brings him in as like, hey, are you want to come in as a top assistant?
Sure.
And then we'll kind of help you that way, which is kind of what I think is going to happen with like Adrian Griffin, Darvin Ham at some point, maybe not in the next year. They're right now, they can sit home, put their feet up and
still get paid.
To not do anything. And we all know what will happen. All those guys, like every other fired coach, they're going to pop up at probably 5 or 6 different training camps this summer. And, they'll be, doing the tour of just, we're checking in with teams. And a lot of times coaches do that. Tibbs talked about that when he got let go. I believe it was from the Bulls, but maybe it was the Timberwolves job. He went around to a bunch of different teams because like, I wanted to learn. Like I wanted to go learn from other coaches. Like what I'm not very good at this and you do this well. Can I come in and spend some time watching how you do things and learn from you? And that's honestly, that's great. That's how it should be, right? This is all these jobs are there's no end goal where it's, well, now I've done it all, I'm perfect. It's not a video game. You haven't leveled up to level 100 and you call it good. Like you can always get better. It's
called a growth mindset. Got to be a lifelong learner. That's something we all struggle with time to time. I get set in my ways for sure, but
if you went any further with that, I was gonna break out Crypto Bro again. I'm not gonna do it. We've got too much other stuff to cover before we had
growth mindset, that phrase just nonstop from teaching, right? That's where it comes from for me. It's the teaching side of things. I think we even had that on our staff t-shirts one year and stuff like that's. Yeah. Anyway, that's
I remember one of my good friends is a history teacher, and he's like the one thing he's like math is kind of math, and like he says it's very insulting to math teachers, right? Because like we're always learning new stuff and everything, but he's like history there's just more of it. He's like every year there's more of it to learn and to be up on it, and we all know a lot of history turns into current events class and those kind of things and all that. So yeah, he always laughs. He's like, it's the one thing where it's like, there's always more to learn. He's like, the rest of it, he's like, yeah, it's kind of been like math is done. Like we're really learning new kinds of math. And that's more of a dig at his teacher friends that are math teachers and the like, because that's, got to have rivalries, right? That's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the way it is. Different departments on the school, they have there's rivalries, there's that the dislike, there's all of that takes place between departments. It definitely happens. And usually in a good way, at least when I was part of it, in a good-natured way, but that was definitely there. Like, hey, history department, we know we're not losing to the language arts department when we go out there and do our teacher competition or whatever, stuff like that.
Without a doubt.
All right, let's jump to this. I don't even have much to say about it. Nikola Jokic wins MVP, as he should. I have no issues with this whatsoever. That would have been my choice. I thought it was pretty much the clear decision. And congrats to Nikola Jokic, very deserving.
Yeah, same in the voting. I thought was fair across the board. With SGA got a handful of first place votes, and people obviously were there. The one part of this whole thing that really did not sit well with me, I did not like Shaq when they brought Jokic on. Yeah. Just saying, like, you shouldn't have won. SGA should have won. Like, you didn't need to tell. Just let him have his moment. You have hours to fill before, after, and at halftime. Just congratulate him. Let him do his piece with them, being interviewed and all that. You could have even said, like, hey, so you won MVP, but you're down 0-2. What do you guys need to do different? Make it more topical and in a better place. But instead, he had to tell him, like, I didn't think you should have won. SGA should have won. Like, you could honestly, what are you hoping to get out of him? Like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know what he wanted out of that. So just that could have waited. That part bothered me.
Here's the problem with that. It would be one thing if he was having that conversation with an MVP voter and saying, I don't agree with who you voted for. I think you should have voted for this person. Jokic doesn't control that.
Yeah.
Telling him you shouldn't have been picked doesn't do it. That does not. He did nothing to influence that in any kind of a way. It's not like he's responsible for himself being named MVP. He goes out there and he plays the game. He doesn't pick who becomes MVP. So he's having the conversation with the wrong person. It's not Jokic's fault. So there's no reason to bring that up to him. Just congratulate him. He's not the one who did that. But anyway, that's
we could spin off on that for a while, but we won't. We'll move on.
All right, let's get to this. We'll start here on this one when we talk about people getting in a little bit of trouble. Jamal Murray got fined for throwing two different things on the court during the game the other night, during game 2 of Nuggets and Wolves. It was bizarre. I can't recall very many times where we see stuff like this happening, where a player from the bench is throwing things onto the court. Also made the money sign at the officials. He was fined, I believe, $100,000, but no suspension. A lot of people were surprised. You and I both said we thought he'd probably get suspended for throwing things onto the court, especially because it could have injured someone. But no suspension, just a fine for Jamal Murray. Why? Why was Jamal Murray not suspended for these actions?
I'm going to make a tinfoil hat and just keep it on my desk here so I can put it on when we get into these subjects. There's part of me, I don't know that this is the reason why, obviously. No one would ever admit to it. But there's a big part of me that believes that the NBA is probably looking and saying, well, they're down 0-2. Without Murray, there's a good chance they'll be down 0-3. And maybe that's how it goes anyway. But let's make sure he's out there because we don't want this whole thing to fall apart on us. We want more games, more series. Let's keep things going.
They've all been pretty short so far.
Yeah. And, maybe they lose anyway. So far, they've been getting their tails whipped. So maybe that happens again. And that's where it goes. I'm not naive enough to believe that's not part of it, right? I think that could have been part of decision-making. Personal opinion, he should have been suspended. I guess what I would say is, all right, you threw the heat pack. What was your end goal? Hit the official? Make him mad? Hurt him? Hope the official slipped on it and got hurt? But you threw it all the way into basically I think right up to the edge of the paint, where any one of the players on the floor could have slipped on. What if Jokic slipped on it and hurt himself? I don't think Jamal Murray would ever forgive himself. I think he'd feel absolutely terrible. But then you doubled down and you threw a towel out there, which thankfully the ball boy grabbed before it made it any further out onto the court. And again, it's the double actions of that, then combined with the money sign at the official. That part, I think, that's terrible. And unless he's insinuating the official placed bets on the game, I don't know how much money is to be made by the Timberwolves winning over the Nuggets. I don't know that they're any more of a national draw than Denver is at this point. They're certainly not any more of an international draw or anything like that. So I just think altogether, he probably should have been suspended for a game, but I very much understand why he probably wasn't.
Well, just going back to that whole argument about the NBA rigging things for big markets and stuff like that. If that was the case, the Warriors would not be in the play-in. The Warriors wouldn't have gotten bounced in the first game of the play-in. Same thing with the Lakers. The Lakers wouldn't get bounced in 5 games. You would have the NBA, right, compared to what they could have made, lost out on tens of millions, if not more. I mean, in terms of ad revenue, eyeballs, all everything that comes with it in the Lakers not going farther, the Warriors not going farther, right? Some of those big market teams getting bounced. And if he's doing the money side, well, the NBA's also had in the first round a bunch of series go really short. Yeah. That's probably also lost them some money that they haven't gone to a game 6, a game 7, right? So if anything, the referees, if you were saying this was financially motivated, they would want to even up the series and make it 1-1 and hope that, hey, let's get a 6-game series. Let's get a 7-game series out of this one so we can try to make up for some of the missed opportunities that we've had. But I'll tell you, what really bothers me is this conversation with Jamal Murray. He's doing a presser here. This came out today. This is the transcript. Reporter asks, did you expect any punishment from the league? Murray says, nah, it is what it is. I take full responsibility. On to the next one. Then reporters follows up. Was it just frustration boiling over? Yeah, on to the next one. It was 2 days ago, not much to say. Reporter says, so obviously he doesn't want to talk about it. Reporter says, were there any conversations with people to apologize for what went on? And he said, do you have any basketball questions? Like, you were throwing stuff onto the court during a basketball game. Your availability was very much in question. That is a basketball question, 100%. Yep. You're asking about like what was going through your head when you risked your ability to play in game 3 for your team. Was there something that you needed to say? Did you need to talk to your team and say, hey guys, I'm sorry I risked that. I'm sorry I put that in jeopardy. Obviously he doesn't want to talk about it, and that's fine. But to say, well, are there any basketball questions? Those are basketball questions that directly impacts the Denver Nuggets and their ability to play basketball. He
also that night left without talking to the media. Just blew out. And you know what? That's what Dylan Brooks did, and we all killed him for it last year in the playoffs when he got up there and yapped and yapped and yapped every time they won. But if they lost, he couldn't be bothered to speak with the media and left. I don't want to hear you talk when things are going good if you're not going to talk when things are going bad. You stand up there, you answer questions, one way or another. And
part of the job.
That's part of it, right? It comes to it. And we've talked about it in the past where people say they don't have to talk to the media if they don't want to. No, that's not true. Actually, they do. It's contractually part of it. It's part of the agreement you make when you sign a contract. So that part of it's all a little silly. And I don't I have no patience for that. So, figure your stuff out, get up there, own your stuff. And all you had to say was I was angry. I was frustrated. I made the wrong decisions. You don't even have to give real answers, because what this does for me is this makes me think you don't think you were wrong in what you did. And now we already talked about it with the Pacers, right? Maybe the Pacers get every call, shoot 50 free throws and win game 3. Maybe the Nuggets now go into Minnesota and they shoot, a bunch of free throws more than the Timberwolves. Timberwolves are hit with fouls early and guys get in foul trouble and all this stuff. And Denver wins game 3 and gets themselves back in the series. And Jamal Murray, if there's 2 things I know you and I share a love of, it's basketball and movies from our youth. So Jamal Murray will say with his $100,000 fine, it's like the kid in Mighty Ducks. 2 minutes, well worth it.
Yep.
Right? That's exactly what he'll say. And off they'll go because we got the point across. So there's 2 different ways. I think Rick Carlisle's way is the far less dangerous and more accepted way. Mm-hmm. And as far as we know, he hasn't been fined for anything he said or did. So, he'll get fined for the ejection because that comes with technical fouls and getting ejected. But, I don't know. I'm guessing Jamal Murray's I have no regrets, and we'll see how it plays out. And you better believe, though, that crowd's going to be out for blood for him. Game 3. They are going to be all over. And that Minnesota crowd has been really, really good. Really, the last couple years, they have been into these games and fired up and ready to go. So I'm pretty excited for that one.
They've been hungry.
Yeah,
they've been hungry like the Wolves, but they've been hungry for playoff basketball. Now they're finally getting that. I'm sure they're going to hope to see a Wolves win and good Mighty Ducks reference. I appreciate that. It's not worth winning if you can't win big. Patrick Beverley suspended 4 games for not just one thing, 2 things. For some reason, I don't know why. We focus more on Patrick Beverley and his interactions with the ESPN. Was it producer, reporter? I forget what the official title is.
She's a producer, yeah.
Producer, okay. So ESPN's producer. We focus more on that. He chucked the ball at fans. He tried to injure fans, and we focus more on the fact that and not that the reporter thing is great, but to me, throwing the ball at somebody's face is worse. And he actually hit a woman. That's worse than him being rude to a reporter in the locker room, which he certainly was, and he certainly deserves criticism for that. But those 2 things combined apparently equal a 4-game suspension for Patrick Beverley. The question is, does it actually cost him anything? Does he get another NBA contract? Because that won't be enforced until next season. He's a free agent this summer. Who knows if he's on another roster next season or not? So this could end up being nothing unless this is a tiebreaker where a team is thinking, gosh, we're going to sign Pat or we're going to sign this other guy. And they go, oh, well, but Pat's got a 4-game suspension. Let's go with the other guy. right? Like that's the way it could actually hurt Patrick Beverley. Otherwise, it's possible this isn't a punishment at all. If his NBA career is over anyway, that's that.
I tend to think most teams will probably look at something like this and they're going to say it's 4 games. It's not, it's whatever. A guy could roll an ankle at the end of the final preseason game and miss the first 4 games. Like, I think teams will, like you said, maybe if it's, man, we are splitting the room, the entire front office and coaching staff on 2 players. And all right, we'll go with the one who's maybe less problematic. I think part of why this is 4 games and not 1 or 2 games, I think we've seen the NBA, we'll say Adam Silver, but it's really like under Joe Dumars to an extent too, set a precedence of, if you have a history of nonsense, we're going to come down a little harder on you.
Yeah, we saw it with Draymond.
With Draymond Green right now, I think, they're sending a little bit of a message here to Pat Bev of, hey man, we're not going to have this. This cannot be a thing. You need to, start cleaning things up a little bit. You can't act like this. To your point, you can't be throwing stuff at fans. Like, that's crazy. Like that's just beyond not okay. Especially if we're going to find Wembanyama for throwing the ball in the stands out of excitement, enjoy. Like, all right, yeah, when you're whipping a ball at people, you should probably get even more punished. So yeah, it is what it is, and we'll see. It'll be one of those things too. Guaranteed, we're all going to be. He signed. Let's just say he resigns with Milwaukee. We're going to get to and be like, why is Patrick Beverley not playing? Oh, that's right. He was suspended because we'll have forgotten about why he's suspended by the time next season rolls around.
Keith, let's finish with this. We do have 2 topics left. We need to talk about the NBA closing in on, or NBC closing in on an NBA package. Let's do that tomorrow, though, on our Front Office Friday live show, because we do need to talk about this one. The word being that Jimmy Butler.
That TV one too. Sorry, just real quick, because there's further news now that maybe TNT is still in the game. So we'll get more detail tomorrow, and we'll definitely cover that on the live show tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll get into that tomorrow. Let's finish with this. Jimmy Butler prefers to remain with the Heat. This is kind of like the back and forth, right? Going on, the negotiation going on. Jimmy Butler saying, I want a max extension. The Heat probably don't necessarily want to give him a max extension. Jimmy Butler saying, well, but there's other teams out there that might want me and might be willing to give me that. And then, but I still love you. But I still love you guys. I still want to stay and all that. It's just the leverage battle. It doesn't surprise me. But I also think, Jimmy Butler would probably prefer to remain with Miami. He's a great fit there. And I hope they, both sides manage to work something out.
And this might be Jimmy Butler's way of saying, I'm not going to absolutely insist on it being a max deal.
Right.
Because if he has a sense of Miami's not going to give that to me, then it'll look like I lost that part of it. So now it'll be, hey, I want to be here. And now the Heat can say, man, we really want you here. And they can maybe get him a little under. And I think what we're seeing is a handful of these teams where they're already super expensive. They're only going to get more expensive if they keep kind of re-signing and re-upping with guys. We're starting to see some of these teams say, all right, this second apron stuff is real. Like, we need to be careful. We cannot just give everybody a max, right? It was like Oprah and car. You get a car and you get a car. It's like, that's what it felt like for a handful of these teams. You can't do that anymore because it's not necessarily the money. That's what sounds weird is it's not the money. These hundreds of millions approaching $500 million in penalties and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's about the restrictions on how are we going to build the rest of the team. We're even hearing the Clippers with the Paul George stuff saying it's not about paying these guys. It's about we need to be able to fill a roster around them. And if we can't do that, it's going to be very hard for us to get there. So I think that becomes the real kind of challenge here on some of that stuff.
The cat wants my attention.
Comforting you.
I know. He's like, it's okay. Jimmy's going to stay in Miami. That's what he's saying right now. Anyway, I think this is ultimately, I agree with you. I think the teams are going to have to start being a little bit more careful. I think the penalties, especially when Eric Pink was on the show yesterday and we were talking about them, it hadn't, like, I knew this, but I hadn't thought of it this way. Like, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to trigger a hard cap at the second tier apron. If you do this, that you're going to trigger a hard cap at the first apron. And I know that's like Pincus's phrase at this point. I would be shocked if he doesn't have a does this trigger the hard cap tattoo somewhere on his body at this point. But I hadn't thought of it in those terms, and teams are going to have to be very, very careful. It's going to be very tricky how they navigate things, to the point where I was almost wondering, for a league that does so well, and this is a much bigger conversation for another day, but for a league that does so well with their offseason player movement and capturing the news cycle, I wonder if they've gone too far to where it's going to stop teams from making some of the moves that generate so many headlines that the NBA dominates social media with. And that's something that was one of my thoughts as we were discussing that yesterday. But yeah, I mean, in general, the Heat and a number of other teams, they're going to have to be careful with their guys. It's going to be more difficult for them to pass out those contracts. Like you said, there's no more Oprah situation.
Yeah, I think windows shrink a little bit more here now, where it is we can be super expensive, but the minute we start tripping into draft picks are getting frozen and we're approaching the repeater tax, and the repeater tax penalties are crazier than they've ever been. All that stuff, I think you're going to see teams maybe reset. So that maybe, I guess, counteracts some of what you were saying, because I'm with you. Like, could we see some lessening of player movement? But maybe if it is, hey, we're always, the league gets divvied up into thirds, where there's like 10 teams that are super expensive that they're kind of going for it right now today. There's 10 teams that they're kind of the next tier. They're playoff teams, and they're making that push. And then you have the 10 that are sort of rebuilding. It's as these teams come down, how are we slowly replenishing and recycling and all that stuff? And I think teams will start to figure that out. And you're going to see some teams turn into, even though you can't sit on mountains of cap space in the seasons, I think you'll see teams say, hey, as we hit the off season, like we have a bunch of cap space, so we can ease your burden. Like, all right, you need to get rid of player X, Y, and Z. Let's, we're here to help with that. You're going to have to pay to do it, and you're going to have to involve us in whatever transaction you go to. But yeah, it's going to be really fun. The difference is this offseason, a couple of the big cap space players, they're good and they're trying to win. So they're not just going to act as a clearinghouse. So it's going to be fun to watch teams navigate this stuff as this all becomes real life now this year moving forward, and kind of new life for a handful of these teams that they haven't been in these positions before, where it's like, we've never really been one of the most expensive teams. What is that going to look like?
Right. Exactly. How everybody navigates it, what's their strategy, that's going to be really fascinating to keep an eye on. But all right, everybody, we will have Front Office Friday. Tomorrow will be our live show, so be on the lookout for that. We'll update everybody on time and everything like that mid-morning. Keep an eye on our social media. Just we'll put it out there so that everybody knows when it occurs, but usually we have to be a little bit flexible with that. So keep an eye out on social media. You can find me at Trevor_Lane, at Keith Smith NBA, and we'll go live. We'll talk some basketball with everybody tomorrow. We'll get into that TV deal and everything else that comes out between now and then, because you never know in this wacky world of the NBA. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe, and don't forget to check out the Basketball Bulletin as well, basketballbulletin.substack.com. Till next time, everybody. See ya, and stay safe.